Welcome to Tech Talk Tuesday with Luis Giraldo over at OOK. I am your host, Paco LeBron. This podcast is where we discuss different ways to run your IT business, whether you are a one-person shop or a leading MSP with or IT service provider with multiple employees. This is the place for you. Let me go ahead and introduce my co-host. We have none other than Rick Smith over at Renactus Technology. Rick, how are you today?
Doing good, Paco. Can't complain. Can't complain. Happy Tuesday, guys.
Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. And then let me go ahead and introduce my guest who I'm super excited to have. I have none other than Luis Giraldo over who is the CEO over at OOK. Luis, how are you today?
Excellent. As somebody who I know would say better than I deserve, but doing good.
Very cool. Very cool. Luis, really excited to have you here. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of how we kind of connected and talk a little bit about your IT service business. But before we jump into that, I like to talk about my favorite thing before we start the show, and that is TechCon Unplugged. TechCon Unplugged is officially back September 16th to the 18th in Chicago at the Hilton Rosemont Chicago O'Hare. This is an all-inclusive ticket as far as regards to meals, all open bar, and to our great Friday and Saturday night social. Obviously, that's minus the hotel, but the website has the details for how to book your stay and parking over there as well. You're going to get real takeaways to bring back to your business and also tap elbows to enjoy those one-to-one conversations that we have desperately missed over the last 18 to 20 months. So tickets are $299, but there is an early bird special for $199 until April 4th. So get your tickets now, techconunplugged.com, before they are gone. All right. Luis, again, really appreciate you jumping on. So we actually met, if I remember correctly, because it's been a blur of the last several months, is over at Channel Futures in Vegas. And we were connected by a mutual friend, Juan Fernandez, who I'm not sure what he's up to nowadays. He's onto everything right now.
He's connecting. That's what he does. He's out there connecting people. Yeah.
Yep. Former MSP owner he is, and was a VP over at ImageNet, I believe, or ImagineNet. I forgot the name of the MSP.
ImageNet, yeah.
ImageNet, yeah. So, and I know he's up to some big things there. So we may grab him on the show here at another time. But connected us. We were I forgot where we were at one of the open networking events that they had. We struck up a great conversation. You were talking with my fiance as well. We had such a great rapport, just talking about culture and just IT and everything in between. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having, first of all, what a great opportunity to come and chat about, IT business, the shop talk, so to speak. I always love that. Yeah, I grew up as a musician actually, and I played music professionally for many years. But I was always interested in the technical side of music. So I was always into the computer part, getting computer music, or notes to show up on the computer through the Sound Blaster MIDI interface of the car, that kind of stuff early on. That goes back to like the late 90s, basically. But then, I got into music professionally and I did that for a lot of years. I got to Vancouver to study audio, and that was kind of my predestined career. It was to do something related to audio or music or whatnot. But what happened was I ended up working at a reseller, doing some retail computer work. And I discovered the server and networking courses that Apple was doing at the time. And I kind of went down that rabbit hole a bit and got really interested in Apple and server stuff and networking and just the client server relationship between computers and servers. And when I left the reseller, I immediately started doing residential IT consulting. There was a clear need at the time. People wanted help in their homes and they didn't want to lug computers around. And so I started delivering computers and helping them set them up. And that sort of snowballed into those clients sometimes calling me in to help with their businesses. And, within a couple of years, I had sort of started shifting into doing business IT support and sort of learning the ropes there. It's a little bit of a trial by fire, if I have to be honest, because I hadn't really started in the IT business, generally speaking, and so I kind of found my way. But I had a great mentor, Mark Cohen, this guy who kind of, I popped up on the Apple Consultants Network page, and out of the blue, he called me like, "Hey, another member, welcome. Who are you? What do you do? Let's get together." And he kind of just brought me under his wing, showed me the ropes, showed me like how to set up servers, was also my lifeline whenever I was doing something in the field and screwing it up. So Mark was great, and he kind of really instilled this collaborative approach to IT consulting, and I think that's a lot of what the culture of our business is made of, right? We see a lot of MSPs really talking to each other, collaborating, and he was great in that respect. And that was kind of the rest is history from there. I started taking on more IT business clients. My first managed services client, like contract based, kind of dropped in my lap in 2008. I got referred to a little medical clinic of 15 people, and they just basically said, "Can you take over this contract? We like you." And I had to reverse engineer how to deliver a valuable service out of a monthly fee. So not like most people start, which is they figure out what they're going to deliver and figure out what they're going to charge and then go offer it. I had to reverse engineer that, and so that was kind of neat. But it gave me the impetus to figure out, hey, how do I build value into a monthly agreement? And that's how the whole thing got started. Now we're 16 years into it, so this year.
Very nice, very nice. That's awesome. There was one thing that you said there that really stuck out to me is that the ability of how you kind of fall into some of these things, right? And being able to understand, and that's kind of how just the path is just kind of written out for you sometimes. And but you mentioned obviously you had a mentor that reached out to you that really helped guide you in doing a lot of that as well. And mentorship is a huge thing that I always encourage for those that are either experienced or trying to figure out what they're trying to do. For us personally, that mentor for me was John Dubinsky, obviously formerly of the Maven Group, who recently retired and is enjoying his life over in Estero, Florida. So I know he is having a very good time enjoying retirement life. But it's amazing on how they can shift that mentality of you thinking a certain direction or kind of educating you on what you don't know, right? And really understanding how to figure out where you want to go and how to just really plant those milestones to help you further on your journey. Rick, did you have anyone that you could say that either helped guide you or at least educate you on kind of some of the things that you've kind of implemented in your IT service business today?
Yeah, well, really, I got a lot from you guys, from you and John, Jeff, and also I had someone not in the industry, but someone who was a mentor, a business coach, who put a lot of ideas in my head about, gave me a lot of ideas as far as running my business and in what I needed to be looking for and doing. So it was kind of twofold. From the technical side, I got a lot of that really once I joined the community and became friends with you guys. I got a lot of that perspective. But again, I had someone who was not in the business, but who was in business, who gave me a lot of that portion of it.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, Luis, how many people are you in your IT service business right now?
6 people today.
Okay.
Um, so the way that I initially has started the business, so it went through two different phases. When I started the business 2006, I was the only owner and grew the business a little bit. I hired a business development person, had a couple of techs, was sort of also trying to work on what I would call the corporate documentation, sort of the corporate book, so to speak, the process stuff. And so I had a
Yep.
technical writer in one of those university practicums for a little while, helping basically write out our company manual and stuff like that. And sort of in 2011 or so, everything kind of came to a head. The biz dev woman that was working with me started an MBA. She left. One of my techs pursued his girlfriend down to Seattle, and so he left. One of the other techs actually started a development career with Microsoft, and he left. And so it was kind of like the perfect storm of, okay, I think it's time to do something. And that's when I was approached by Fully Managed, which is today Canada's largest MSP. And
Mm,
I back then they were 30 people, 40 people, and I merged with them to start an Apple practice inside of Fully Managed.
mm,
And I was there for about a year. And when I left Fully Managed, kind of restarted my MSP on my own. But then my very next hire was actually a 50-50 partner in 2013 with Simon. And then when he came on board, it was just now the two of us. So the second time around, in 2012, I was thinking always to myself, I want to be able to share the accountability a little bit. I think I kind of had a desire for that. And Simon was willing to jump in. And so we did that. And then when Mike came along in 2016, we did the same thing. We sort of brought him in as an equal partner. And so it was the three of us for a few years. And in the last couple of years, we've started bringing on a few more folks. So we have Hatham now, who's a wonderful technician, Clinton, who's really great, and Marnie, who really runs the back of house, the office administration, all that stuff. So it's the six of us today.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, and that's great to really understand that, like, and I think a lot of people just don't, there's always that conversation of like, how big is your MSP and like how many people you got? I mean, there's many successful one-man shows, two-people shows, less than 10 employees that are really killing it and really understanding on how they're trying to do. But there was a thing in there that I'm hoping now that I'm actually going to probably modify some of my questions toward this section, because in our community, there is a lack of exposure to the Apple ecosystem. And I think that there is a lot of people that are trying to really understand how to implement that, because I think Apple is starting to come more and more into the workforce, whether that is being implemented as a business essential, that the business is providing as hardware or equipment to their employees, or there are users that are bringing their own devices that happen to be Apple products as well. And now they're kind of trying to figure out how to manage and how to go, from there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first was exposed to the Apple ecosystem and kind of what made you pursue it? It sounds like you were on their consulting program, and how did you kind of dive into the Apple monster that we call?
Yeah. So I would say it's happened in a few different phases too, because when I first joined the Apple has a program called the Apple Consultants Network, the ACN. And that program has existed for quite a long time, and it's a wonderful community. A lot of the folks that some lifelong friendships I've made through that program. And when I joined that program in 2007, um, the focus at the time was very residential. I would say maybe some business customers, but at the individual level, you'd work with business users, but it was really to help them with their device specifically. And it was interesting, I think, when the MacBook Air came out, I remember this very well in 2009, around that time. Um, C-level execs started showing up at the office with their MacBook Airs and sort of, "Hey, IT, make this work for me." And so there started this little sort of need to, "Hey, how do we make some Macs work?" But at the same time, I think there was a lot of pushbacks, like, "Oh no, we're a Windows shop. We Macs are useless. We don't." And a lot of it came, I think, from the fear or a non-understanding of the platform and how to make it work in business. And don't get me wrong, there were challenges. Active Directory was a little bit of a trick back then, and so things have gotten a lot better. I think the Mac today is a wonderful corporate citizen of business networks, but it's not been without its challenges. In any case, I see a lot of shops really just haven't ever built up the skill set to do Apple or Mac stuff, and so, but they're more open to it now. And I think the user choice is becoming a big deal. Also, a lot of businesses are started to get really focused on the end user experience, and in many cases, that means letting users use whatever they want to use. That
Yeah.
could be a Mac, a PC, whatever they're going to be most productive on. And so I see way more MSPs open to the idea of like, okay, we need to manage some Macs. Let's figure out how to do that. A lot of the RMM platforms are starting to do
Right.
multi-platform support. But let me clarify that when I brought Simon on board, he was a Windows guy, like Exchange Server Night, like he Macs with a 10-foot pole kind of thing,
Mm.
type of dude. And so we kind of, but the idea was let's become platform agnostic. Why should we
Sure.
force customers down one path or the other? So that was always the impetus. I think the company was kind of built on that premise of like, let's help customers with whatever technology they need. And that's worked well for us. I think we get a lot of Mac clientele who eventually we end up selling like server infrastructure to that is entirely Windows based, but they have their Mac clients, and that's cool. And so I think there's a lot going on, a lot of things to learn about the ecosystem. I think Microsoft is interestingly kind of replicating a lot of the stuff. You look at things like autopilot, the way that deployment works for auto deployment technologies and stuff like that is very similar to how Apple has been doing it for probably 10 years now. And so it's interesting to see a lot of that stuff sort of become normalized, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Sure. No, that it makes total sense. Rick, do you have a love or hate for the Apple ecosystem?
Well, yeah, I'm not a. I think the Apple has its place, and it goes back to what you said. It was a lot of resistance on taking on Mac, but you figure initially it was I don't need that guy. He's got a couple of Macs. Then you find out the next client has a couple. The next client has a couple. So it's something we are going to have to take a lot more serious now. I do have some clients with Macs, and I struggle through it. So I can imagine, the ecosphere for Mac is just for me like a foreign language. So it just drives me absolutely nuts. But I'm in there learning, and the sad part about this is, I guess I could say it, we're amongst friends. I get more of my Mac insight from my kids because all of them have Macs and they love Macs and they won't touch a Windows machine, and I won't touch a Mac.
That's awesome. Well, let me say that I think in general, if you think of how MSPs just go to market, we sell what we know. We talk and help people with what we know. And if you don't know Max, then that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles, I suppose. But what I will say, and I'll challenge you, Rick, if you're up for it, the Mac challenge. Use a Mac for 1 month without touching a Windows PC, and you'll find that you have a lot of challenges with certain things that you were used to doing a certain way in Windows, and suddenly you have to change how you think about everything. But I think the key outcome of doing something like that is that it makes you a little bit more empathetic with your Mac users. Because I think one of the challenges that I see out there in the field is that Windows fanboys are really hardcore against the Mac users. The pocket of resistance over there, the creative designers group, the graphic design group of 5 people that never get any support, never get any endpoint protection, never get nothing because we don't know how to manage those guys. They're on their own. So anyways, the Mac challenge.
It was funny. As part of the plan, at the beginning of the school year, we bought 2 for my kids. We bought them 2 of the new Macs, the M1 chips. Mm-hmm. So I took both of their old Macs. I still have them sitting over here in the corner. I said that I was going to set them up for me and at least one and use it just to get a feel for it. Now that's been since September. We're in January. I haven't done it yet, but it is a plan, and it's interesting you say that because I think I'm going to give it a try and just see. I don't know if I can use it exclusively for a month, but I will use it as much as I can for a month.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, all good points around. I think that there's an amazing opportunity for IT service providers that are trying to figure out how to really adopt and really manage a hybrid environment that's Windows or Mac, Apple environment, or for those that are converting. I know for us, we have a Mac Mini bench that we kind of test all our stuff with, and that's really how we've kind of done all of our stuff. And exactly like you said, Luis, it was one of those where I just literally bought it, sat it, and just sat there and tried to learn it. I even think I bought a MacBook Air way back when to use it as a daily driver for the week. And it's amazing on how using it as a daily driver helps you understand more on not only the user experience, but now you can walk the user through because now you understand what they're trying to go through and then try and piece that together. Like we have a client right now, a 70 user client that went completely from HP and over 2.5 years, completely removed all Windows systems and went into the Apple environment. And they're very much on the Microsoft side of the house. So that was a bit of a transition because, as you mentioned, we all have certain tools that are all gung-ho for the Windows and Microsoft environment. However, how do you handle and how do you figure out the Apple ecosystem? And it takes a little bit of finagling and understanding that the two really aren't that much different, but at the same time, they really are in the point of ease of use and for the user itself. So I think that is an opportunity. Like you said, that Mac challenge is definitely just get an old one, deal with it, figure out from there. But that's what we've grown, and we're comfortable with testing solutions and understanding solutions. And really any solution that I adopt has to take care of both environments because I have such a big user base that's really adopting the Apple ecosystem, especially when it comes to their day-to-day drivers.
So, from even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I think this is the piece that surprises a lot of people. In North America, I've just pulled up Stat Counter. In North America alone, the Mac market share for desktop operating systems is now 27%.
Wow.
It used to be like 5%,
I was going to say, I remember it being less than 10.
Yeah, and so 27% is not a percentage to sneeze at, so to speak, because I think this is where you start to find this client came on board and maybe they're 80% Windows, but they're not going to hire a provider that can't properly support the 10 Mac users that they've got, right? And suddenly you have to take yourself out of your own race, and so that really sucks when you have to do that. So I think even skilling up one person to understand how to get a Mac client onto Active Directory, how to do the file sharing, how to do the endpoint management, a little bit of MDM, I think gets you a long way to sort of getting others interested in that as well. But also like a little bit of a culture of platform agnosticity, I guess, is the
Yeah.
best way to describe it. It's like, hey, technology is technology, and we're here to help clients, whatever they need. Why can't we do that?
Yeah.
I think the challenge has been getting your brain around it. For me, it's always been a left brain, right brain thing.
Yeah.
The Windows is the left brain, the Mac is the right brain because
Yeah.
the keys are different, what you hit. But I definitely agree with you. It is something we're gonna have to take more serious and learn to be basically platform agnostic, as you say, and because we're getting more and more of those mixed environments. And I see it now, and I've learned enough to get a Mac on Active Directory. I've learned enough to back it up. And but I think one of the things that may make sense, like you're a 6-person shop, and you said your one of your partners came in who hadn't used it, is the next tech that I hire, I'm going to want them to be more Mac based, or not. They don't have to be specialized in it, but have a lot more knowledge on the Mac as well. Because I think that may be a good way to do it. Is just have at least someone in house who can solve the issues that come up, rather than using Google for everything or calling Paco.
Well, I'll tell you what. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Luis.
No, I was just gonna say it's 100. I think in my experience so far, it's 100% been a culture thing and mentality thing. We had a tech a couple years back that knew Windows really well, but behind the scenes was a real Linux fan, and so it was great that he knew Linux. But here's where the mentality problem became an issue: is that every client visit he was trying to convince clients to switch to Linux, and so it's funny now thinking in retrospect, but at the time you don't want to tell clients to use whatever they're best at using and not necessarily impose your will on them. And so I think that's the thing we need to be careful about just overall.
And you made a very good point. I think that whenever there's that conversation of, hey, Apple or Mac or PC, and a lot of us do not answer that question in a very agnostic way, in an unbiased way, because like you just said, it's and how I always approach that is like, it's really a personal preference. For me, I like X, right? And that's how I would go into that. Whereas you see some that are like, yeah, that's totally garbage. And it's not just even just Apple and Microsoft. It's with any product. It's really like, Data or Acronis. You have different tool sets of like, hey, do you like StarTech or Kangaroo? Or, you keep going back and forth. And it's like, no, it's definitely these guys because that's your favorite. And you hear in the industry that it's like, oh, that's totally the way you should go, instead of just really understanding that opinion is not fact. And that is something that I have beaten like a dead horse.
Except IT guys are experts at making it opinion fact, though.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And that's kind of why I drive into that too, because that's why we have our a Facebook, an online community we host on Facebook, because again, I think a lot of these big groups, although helpful, someone new who's afraid to answer, post a question, ask a question that they feel, is very rudimentary or very level one, and they're trying to get help, but you have some jerk that just answers that's again as opinion as fact, and then they're never going to ask again, and then they're kind of belittled, and they just don't want to get involved in the community. And I think it's a shame that to kind of go through that. But steering gears a little bit, because I know that you're not only an Apple shop, and I know we kind of dive into that trait or into that track, but I think on our last conversation that has kind of shifted into kind of either a 50-50 or 60-40 type situation on your business clientele for Microsoft and Apple to Apple. As far as technology being technology and being agnostic, could you share a little bit about what you're using for your tech stack, and like how are you helping to manage your clients right now, whether RMM, AV, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, on how that's really helping you over at Ook?
Yeah, tech stack. That's like the favorite honeypot conversation topic of IT people. So I think this is, I think, the perennial mistake that we make as IT folks is to become hyper obsessed on the tech stack, because I think
Mhm.
ultimately whatever you're using, it's going to ultimately come down to process and making sure that you've figured how whatever tool you're using works. So I'd stay away of talking about tech stuff for a couple of reasons. One, security reasons, since this is going to be on the public intertrons for eternity. Um, and but I'll say that, yeah, whatever you're using, I think the bigger decision is, um, are you going to get into the right tool set from the beginning? And by right meaning, something that's capable of growing with you. I think most of the major products can grow with you as your business evolves and grows. Um, are you going to be platform agnostic? Does the RMM tool you're choosing, can it do Max, or are you going to have to figure out a second tool, and then that becomes sort of a little bit of a management nightmare? I think those are more important decisions than specifically which brand, of preference. And I think you see these conversations on the Facebook groups or Slack groups pretty much every other day. It's like, what is everybody using for ARM and what's everybody using for PSA? And basically, every time they do that, you get every response listed in the replies, because
Sure.
everybody's using everything. And so I
Right.
think the grass is always greener syndrome is always tough to deal with in our business, because I find that every vendor promises that they're going to fix all your problems with their tool, and you sort of make the jump and you switch RMMs and it's super impactful, and a year later you're still doing the same thing. Nothing has changed because it always came down to process. So I don't know, interesting conversation. Sorry for answering but not answering, I guess, but
No,
No, it's
we
totally
always
good.
pose that to our guests. We have this some that are willing to kind of just open doors, but we have those that don't, because they feel, whatever they may be doing. Some have even had built custom systems that they've had to kind of keep kind of on the quiet to understand their stuff. But what I'll do is I'll probably shift that a little bit and say, is there a piece of software or tool that you feel that you cannot go without, whether it's month to month, day to day, that you absolutely had to get
mm.
use in your MSP?
Probably TeamViewer today would be that tool. And I'll tell you
Okay.
the mentality that I gave myself when I was thinking about tool stacks is, I said at one point, if I can jump on any computer and help a customer, then I'm set, whatever that is. I didn't want to be sort of limited to my specific machine because it had 10 tools or software that I had to get a license key for, or had to figure out how to move from device to device. And so I
Mhm.
think the portability became sort of the mantra of supportability. And so I think that was an interesting way to think about it from the beginning for me.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, as far as for your clientele, have you bunkered down on a particular niche for your IT service business, or are you supporting just essentially any small businesses with a particular demographic, like size? How have you kind of made that decision
Mm.
for your business?
I would say that was definitely a learning curve of, I think we always take whatever business, who am I to refuse a dollar of business, right? In the beginning
Right.
when you're sort of growing your business. But I think at some point we realized that, the sub 15 user client is probably a different mindset and a different expectation of IT overall.
Mhm.
And unless they're growing and sort of quickly going from 15 to 20 to 25 or what have you, we found that we were always just struggling to get them to understand the value of IT, or to make decisions on certain budgetary requirements and so on and so on. So I would say, a minimum of 15 people is probably our starting point today. Unless they like, we might get a 5 user company and they come in and say, hey, we're willing to pay your 10 user minimum or 15 user minimum. We just want, great IT. And that's a different conversation altogether. But 15 people. In terms of industries, I think we're all over the place. We seem to have a lot of architectural clients, graphic design types, and in mixed platforms. Some of them are Windows, some of them are Mac. There doesn't seem to be like a platform specific approach to those. Some manufacturing, some retail, some food and beverage. The food and beverage folks, bless their hearts, had a real tough time the last couple of years,
Yeah.
um, but some of them are really good. They're really inventive, really innovative. They've done the whole delivery, come up with ideas to keep their businesses afloat, and we've tried to stay by them and help them out wherever we could. Yeah, no particular vertical, I'd say.
Gotcha. No, understood. Yeah, I think you mentioned a very good big point there, is just to understand that, again, not all not all money is good money, and I had this conversation with a buddy of mine as well, where we're in a similar fashion of trying to, what's our strategy and how do we grow as a business. And as our transitions right now, it's basically we're in the middle of understanding who are not our profitable clients, and understanding and figuring out which are, we may love them, and we in everything that we do, but if it's not profitable, we're not in charity as well. That's another part of what I do in my philanthropy stuff. So it's a big piece of understanding your numbers and trying to really figure out what you're trying to do. Rick, have you really gone into the niche concept, or what were some of the things that you had to figure out as you grew your business on a clientele basis to make sure you did come out with some quality prospects / clients to onboard?
Well, I'm still in the process, but I'm not in any particular niche. I've found that there are some, when I look through my book of business, I'll notice that there are more of a certain type. So we will focus there and we will emphasize that when that comes across. But it's about, as you guys were talking about, it's about maturity. As your business matures and you start to learn where you want to be, what size, what particular industry, if any. But you start to learn, and I noticed this the other day on a new meeting with a new client, that you get a sense almost immediately whether this is something good for you or not. And it doesn't necessarily matter the size, because I will tell you this, one of the things I am learning is big clients can be headaches just as well as small clients can be headaches. And some headaches are just not worth it. And I found a call I was on the other day. It was a pretty, nice sizable client, but I realized this is not going to be for me. And it wasn't because of the technology. It wasn't because of I think it was more so of the culture of what it was going to bring. And I think that comes with, and speaking with my coach, my business coach would always say that as your business matures and as you mature, your outlook matures, and you know what you want, and you are brave enough to say no sometimes. And that's been the challenge, we all had, is like, like you said, you don't really want to throw money out the window or watch it pass you by. But sometimes you make the short-term decision that benefits you in the long term.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember writing this blog post for the website a little while back, and it was called Learning to Say Yes, because I had a hard time learning to say no in the first place. And I always struggled with, like, how can I refuse $1 of business, right? It's always been this, headbutting thing that I have. And so I had to put my mind to it. It's like, well, can I put some parameters around my yes? Can I make it a yes on my terms and my conditions? And the answer was yes. Most of the time, you could probably make it work for you and your terms, but there's still that chance that it's too much of a headache, that it's not worth it in the first place. And you, even down the road, you regret having taken on that client. So 100%, I think understanding your own culture is a key piece to that. 100%. I would say that's one of the most important things. And we take so long to figure that out because we just are often not thinking or spending time, thinking about the culture piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big piece where, like, we can say it to all of the listeners here who are starting out, but it's really that experience that helps you develop your spidey sense, those red flags, to really understand, like, yeah, this seems like this is kind of going to be a similar situation that we just got out of. Don't want to take that deal. Or it could be they don't really fit in our structure standardization that we've set. Do I really want to make that exception? How much more labor am I going to have to spend on this to learn a new system, convince them to switch, et cetera, et cetera? And having that conversation up front, it's a really big opportunity to really understand your own growth, like you just said, and the outlook of how you want to take on business, because it's really that. It's your business. You can decide who you want to take in and drive you to exactly either a really great opportunity and benefit to your business, or drive you out of your mind and try and figure out how do you go ahead and get out of this situation and forget why you got into this in the first place. I mean, I think and way back when, I had to let go of a client because I just was not keeping up with what they thought this was going to be, and they grew too fast for me at the time. I think it was just about 5-6 years ago, and I was only a one-man show at the time, and they had a lot more projects. They grew in staff, just could not keep up with them, and it was just a constant. I dreaded waking up Monday morning to find a call coming from him.
Yeah.
And so that's when I read, I think it was the Pumpkin Plan was at the time, where it's like you have that cringe
Great
factor.
book.
Yeah. For those that haven't, from Mike Michalowicz, pick it up. We'll have that in the show notes. But it's that cringe factor. Like, if you see the name, is it, oh, cool, hey, how's it going? Or is it, oh, why? So you got to really figure that piece out. And again, sometimes you don't know until you go through it. But we are hopefully trying to communicate that so you don't have to go through that as well.
And
Let me comment just for a quick sec on the vertical piece, because I think Rick said something that was interesting, that you find your niche and you sort of start focusing on that, and that it's important to focus on that. And I'm donning the ScalePad shirt. Paco, you know that I've also had a career as a software executive in the MSP vendor space for a little
Yep.
while. I built my own documentation tool, went to IT Glue, then was at Kaseya, then Enable, and now I'm at ScalePad. But what's interesting this whole time is some of the conversations I've had the chance of having. One of them is with Paul Dipple, and Paul Dipple is the guy that's been benchmarking MSPs and helping MSPs with process and operational maturity for some odd 25 years. And one of the things he talks about that's always surprising is that the data does not show in any way that focusing on a specific business vertical makes any difference to the outcomes or success opportunity of the MSP. And it's always centering memory, because you would think that a single vertical doing the same things allows you to tweak your process. But I think his point is that you can abstract the process inside the MSP from the vertical of the client. It's whether you sort of give in to some of the unique challenges or requirements that some clients may have. And those tend to not be vertical specific necessarily. They just tend to be relationship specific.
Right.
How you go to market with a certain client and change your process. He talks a lot about this. And so I always remember that. And it's like, yeah, okay. Sometimes we've thought, oh, we should go work with more architectural clients because we seem to do well, or we know that industry well. But the data just does not show that makes it any better. And so when another client in a different vertical comes knocking, I'd hate to be the one that says no, because we're focusing on architecture. And so anyways, that was
Sure.
my...
Right. And it's just it's interesting. I think about what you just said, and we do have a lot of a specific, and it wasn't on purpose. It just kind of worked out that way. It kind of worked out that one client referred us to another client, who referred us to another, and before you know it, we were working a lot with that. But again, we take what comes that feels good. And I think this is, again, like, I'm actually proud of the fact that I was able to say no, because rather than them fitting the vertical, they needed to fit basically what we were doing. And I knew that wasn't coming. And one of the things I'll say to everyone, it's hard. I know when you're starting, because we were all there, it's hard to say no when you're trying to, make ends meet, make everything work out. But if and sometimes we've all been through this, in your gut, you're sitting someplace and you probably can't even put your finger on why, but this is not a good idea. This something's telling you should walk away. I'm going to say walk away, because somehow, I think 99.9% of the time your gut is telling you the right thing, and you just got to follow it.
Yeah,
100%. I believe that.
And just going back to the vertical piece as well, to carry that even further is, there is that phrase, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right? And I think these last 18 months have really showed that, where there were a lot of industries that really took a big hit, and really, like, to the point where there were some of us that just didn't make it in the past 18 months and their business had to unfortunately close down, while others, either who spread out or just happened to make the right bets, succeeded. So that's something to take into effect, that maybe being able to spread across different type of industries, different type of businesses can help widen your portfolio as well. So, being on a specific niche, I think that's also coming out now, is that really the value, and is that really going to help you in the long term, in the event that something were to happen to your business, that you have to basically shift and pivot?
The other thing I'll say about that is, potentially, uh, I think the size of shop that you are maybe it keeps you curious. And if you're very process minded and process driven, maybe you decide early on, I'm just going to focus on law clients. And I know MSPs that only do law clients and things like that. And hey, kudos, they become sort of thought leaders in that particular vertical, and they become a great resource to those clients. But imagine if you were a food and beverage vertical.
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
pandemic, it'd be tough. But I think also the main thing about verticals is that you tend to deepen your knowledge in the vertical when you focus on it. And I think that that's sort of the natural tendency of that. If you become an expert in something, you tend to want to focus on it. But I think I was naturally curious about other things, and I wanted to deal with other tools and other industries, and so I kind of never locked myself into the vertical type of approach, if you will. So we kind of kept it
Sure.
loosey goosey that way.
From
Awesome. Sounds
from
good.
a marketing perspective, it works. I know it's you can always target, a group if you're doing, if you specialize in that, you can use that from a marketing perspective. But from an overall business perspective, it can come back again. It's like you said, to bite you, because
That's right.
the other part about this is we talk about being in not being in any particular industry getting hit. It's the same thing we need to think about when we think about the size of our clients, because we don't want one particular client to make up a larger portion of our revenue, because if we lose that client, we're screwed. So it works kind of the same way.
Yeah, well, marketing experts that we are all, right? MSPs.
So kind of driving into that marketing aspect of it, Luis, how has your business gone out to find new clients, or have you had that, or have you had the opportunity of where word of mouth has really been bringing in a lot of business to your door?
I love this conversation. I've had this same conversation with a couple of people in different contexts. Paul Green, who's a MSP marketing guy, I posed the question on an interview to him. I said, I love that us MSPs, we kind of take it like a badge of honor that we've never spent $1 on marketing, that word of mouth has been how we've grown our business from day one. But then under our breath, in the very next sentence, we're like, but how do you get more leads? And so I always find this sort of dynamic very interesting, because I think the growing MSP just doesn't have the time to do marketing consistently, which is really what it's
Yeah.
all about, is consistency more than anything else. And when then we do one thing and we do 1 month of AdWords and we expect, a bunch of leads from it. And it doesn't work like that. And I think Paul has really ingrained this thinking in me. And so I definitely recommend. Paul puts out so much great content for MSPs that are ready to start doing marketing and commit to the process. Paul Green's MSP Marketing.
MSP
.com.
marketing.
Yeah.
Right.
He's
Yep.
so
And
good.
the unique thing about him is that he's per territory too. So it's like if your territory is booked, he won't take you on, but you can definitely adopt a lot of his learnings and great resources
100%.
that he puts out for the public.
Yeah, I think, but where marketing is concerned, it's certainly like if you're growing, if you're a 2, 3 person shop, probably marketing is on top of mind because you're trying to grow the business. But also, like you can't let service fall behind, and you're trying to,
Yes.
and the next client you bring on could break you, and so you just can't sort of not pay attention to doing IT support. I think in those stages, it could be really hard. I think this is why some of these guys that help you do the marketing for you, or lead generators, the Marketopia folks are super interesting. I find to help get you people into your funnel can be really interesting. But my MSP, we, aside from the website, I think we've never really done any marketing except maybe I actually, we're members of the Tech Tribe, and I love the Tech Tribe. That's Nigel Moore's thing,
Mhm.
because they
Yeah.
do this really cool marketing social media download every month. And so we can upload this to our Zoho social that we use for publishing to Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And at least getting our social media on some kind of regular cadence has been super helpful, because when people go and look us up, they don't see like a post from 4 years ago as the
Yeah.
most recent post on our, LinkedIn profile. So that I think is helpful. Just a little bit of constance there.
Yeah, and now you can actually also get the blogs go directly to you. I think it's the blogs.
That's
blog
right.
posts
Yeah,
go
if you have a
directly to you. Yeah.
WordPress site,
Mhm.
it can publish directly to your blog and also publish. Yeah, the challenge I see with the blog piece is that Google does penalize you for
Mhm.
having the same content as
Same
a bunch of
content,
other
right?
people. So
Yep.
personally been, well, this is the other thing. I think we're all so picky about the content we put on our websites that we do nothing as the alternative. But the but I've been picky about only putting, real developed content that I've
Yeah,
written on the website. So I've tried to think about like an article focus. So I wrote an
yeah.
article about certification. I wrote an article about the value of managed services. I wrote an article about learning to say yes. And those are the 3 articles I wrote 6 years ago that I've never written anything new. But I think the social piece is where it's at probably longer term.
Yeah, I think exactly like you said. I think there's so many great services that are out there. As a Tech Tribe, Nigel Moore, great community friend of the show here. We got to have him back on again. He has a lot of great packed information in there.
And a real
You know,
fun
you
guy too.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love Nigel too.
he's super cool. Then you have you got an ASCII group that offers a similar situation where you can do your social media posts and stuff like that. But you made a great point on like, you got to be careful. You got to be specific with your content. You want to make sure that you are looking into what you want to have out there, what's representing you. That's why we use Tech Blog Builder, because they create custom content for us, because I can't write a unique thought to save my life, let alone Grammarly proper, put it in proper grammar. So they'll create the custom content for me at a pretty good type price. And exactly like you said, it's a custom blog. I gave them the topic, I review it, it's really good, and it's mine. No one else has it. No one's it. It's unique content. So that's really helped us grow. And we actually have even utilized that content in other places as well. I forgot the name of the book. It's like They Ask, You Answer, I think it's the name of the book, which is really good.
Not familiar.
I'll have to find the name of it and put the link. But essentially, it's like, what do you do to really understand and put information that people are asking and send them a link and really redo your inbound lead process and your funnels? And really great book. I took down a lot of information. I'll put that into the show notes here. And then we have our good friend Matt Lee in the chat here. Hello,
Oh, is
Matt.
he? Where's
Yep,
where's the
yep.
chat on Facebook?
No, he is on YouTube. He is going ahead and saying howdy right here. Got to put him on there onto the page there.
There he is.
Yep. So Matt, how's it going? For those that don't know, Matt Lee, Cyber Matt Lee, over on his YouTube channel as well, did us a phenomenal opportunity and really helped us out at the last TechCon and doing our Microsoft 365 boot camp, which was a huge hit with our attendees. So if you don't know Matt, head over to his page. He's got a lot of great information. And Matt, we will be in touch soon, my friend. We'll have you back on here because he's got some interesting stuff. But all right, so going back to marketing and going to clients, I want to round out the show with a question we always ask every IT service provider. And Luis, what was one of your biggest mistakes or things that you did in the past that you wish you would have changed or done sooner for the growth of your business now?
I love this question. I ask it all the time. However, I don't think many people ask me that question, and so let me think for a hot minute.
Sure.
Certainly, as I get older, I definitely have shifted by thinking to try and make learning opportunities out of mistakes or shift the mindset, I think, of what I figure out along the way. If I had to try and do something sooner, it would probably be the shared accountability framework with clients. I think for too long, MSPs are just a service provider, considered like an off-the-shelf vendor that provides something that the client needs when they need it. And it's a mentality that comes from the break fix approach of doing IT, I think, where we just, we wait for the call, we get the call, and then we do whatever they need, and then we disappear into the sunset until the next call. And I think we carry that into the managed services model to our demise, because one of the challenges that we have, I think, as MSPs, as we grow, is getting the client to be part of the strategic process and a true partner in with the MSP in everything that they're doing. And so I would say that if I could have done that sooner and figured out like how to really bring my clients into the strategic conversation on the same side of the table, so to speak, I think I would have had a lot more success with things like QBRs and all the strategic efforts that we know we have to do, but that we don't do because we just get lazy, because we don't have a process, because the clients are not involved in it. So it's like a trickle effect of all the things that we could be doing better because of this one, I think, key part of business building, which is that strategic process.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. One last thing that I will go ahead and type chat in here for Luis. If there are those that are looking for resources on either trying to figure out how to even develop a process and standardize their ways, or even being able to get into, let's say, the Apple Pro, if that's an ecosystem they wanted to do, is there any resources or anything that you could share that really helped your IT service business either get involved in the Apple ecosystem slash help generate that technology agnostic view on providing process so that they can help grow and scale?
You know, it's funny how much people in each of their circles take so much of the learning part for granted after the fact. Because, like, if you go sat in a little conversation of 3 or 4 Windows people, you know, there's so many things. If you're trying to learn Windows, like, they would not be talking about any of the things that would help you learn Windows. They'd be talking about some deeper problems. And so I find the same happens a bit in the Mac community. But let me list a couple resources that I think are cool. There's a Slack group called the Mac Admins Slack. Macadmins.org is a great resource. You know, several tens of thousands of Mac admins sharing and collaborating and asking questions, channels for just about every topic you can imagine. I think the Mac Admin Slack is a great resource. There's a great podcast run by 3 Apple shops called Command Control Power. Command Control Power is awesome. Joe, Sam, and Jerry have been they are on episode 450 of their podcast. They've been at it for quite a while. We recently did a little revisiting because I was on their podcast 10 years ago talking about Macs and managed services. And so those guys talk a lot of Apple shop, which I think is great to hear. But I would say, hey, I'm an open book. I would say if somebody wants to learn the Apple ropes, I'd be more than happy to jump on a call and have a discussion and give you sort of the pointers. Maybe we should put a resource together as I think about it. But either way, you know, happy for people to reach out. You can find me at luis@ook.co. That's ook.co. Or at ScalePad, luis.giraldo@scalepad.com. Either one of those addresses will find me. And I think there's a couple really key pieces of like how the deployment enrollment programs work and just the MDM framework overall that are key for people to understand, that is different than how it works in Windows. And once you understand those pieces just conceptually, I think everything else is just IT. And so, but happy to work through some of those with folks.
Very cool. No, again, Luis, really appreciate you taking out the time. I know this was going to be a great interview. We will have you on here again because I think we have a lot to talk about. We didn't even get, like you kind of talked about in the beginning of the episode, kind of what you're doing over at ScalePad right now, your days over at Monkeybox, which was a huge IT documentation center that John Dubinsky used to use back in the day. So definitely a lot more information, definitely a lot more that we can learn about you, my friend, and I appreciate you making the time. If anyone wanted to reach out, I know that you gave your emails there. Those are going to be the best ways to do so. So again, really appreciate all those kind words and appreciate you coming out. Rick, any final word? Oh, go ahead, Luis.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor. It's always, this is the thing I learned from Mark, by the way, is just, there's nothing that I know that is unique to my process. Like, share information freely and things will come. And that's worked really well for me over the years.
Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, if there's one thing I know is I don't know everything. And that's a for sure phrase that we use in the community for Rick.
Love
any lasting words for before we end off here?
Well, Luis, I want to thank you too. I think it was a great show, and I think you offered a lot, and definitely give us some more to think about the Mac side of business. But the whole business conversation we had, I think, was great. Now, guys, you know my final spiel is every week. We are working hard for TechCon Unplugged. We're working hard for MSP Unplugged to make this, to make our community better. So if anyone has any questions, comments, suggestions, things you'd like to see, things you don't want to see, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me at rick@mspunplugged.com or info@mspunplugged.com. I promise you, I will take your considerations, take your information. Paco and I will talk about it, and we'll more than likely will make changes that make sense. But we're definitely looking for input from everyone in the community. So I would appreciate that if you have any to give. Other
Hey,
than that,
Rick, let's get on a Teams call soon and set up that Mac laptop for you, huh?
all right, we'll work on that. We'll do that.
There you go. It's all about giving here in the community. And but again, appreciate you both gentlemen making the time as always. And for those that are just tuning in for the first time, feel free to join us every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central for Tech Talk Tuesday or Resource Thursday on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Central. Feel free to go ahead and watch the podcast, the video podcast on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. And we've newly started streaming over at facebook.com/MSP Unplugged as well. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. You can also use your favorite podcatcher to take us wherever you go as well. Audio-wise, we are on Amazon Music, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time on MSP Unplugged.
Peace.